Joe Knight was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma back in 2012, and she, with her own research, decided to refuse the conventional therapies. She didn't want to go down the surgery, radiation, and or chemotherapy route. So with her own research, she put some things into action in her own lifestyle. And now 5-6 years later, she is actually cleared of all the cancer markers. So she'll share with us how she did that. And it's going to be an exciting talk. So here we go. Welcome, Joe Knight, to the show.
Steve.
There you are. Hey, Joe.
Hi, Steve. Hi.
Good morning here in the U.S. and good afternoon in the U.K. So,
yes. Okay.
So yeah, Joe, you had this diagnosis back in 2012. Breast cancer, very scary for people. I know there's a lot of different kinds, and it's very confusing for people. You know, and actually, some of the breast cancers have been recently the ductal carcinoma in situ, I think, have been overtreated and overdiagnosed, and many, I think it was about 30,000 people a year are treated unnecessarily for that. However, that wasn't the case with you, right? Your breast cancer was something that had started to metastasize, right? It's moving.
No, it didn't metastasize. It was it was diagnosed as a grade 1 category, if you like, and it was very much contained in one small area. Okay. So it never got to that stage of spreading or metastasizing. I can't say the word very well. Metastasizing. So for me, it never kind of, you know, it got fractionally bigger, but it didn't spread anywhere else in my body.
Okay, good. So we'll bring us back there in 2012, because we're gonna. From what I understand, this diagnosis actually brought on a lot of changes in your lifestyle and everything. So, what was your life like back then? How was your lifestyle? And, you know, maybe even, you know, bring us right up to the moment where you got diagnosed.
Okay, yes. Well, in many ways, you know, I regarded my life as a very healthy, happy, you know, lifestyle. I had recently got married and moved to the southwest of England, to a very beautiful area called Cornwall, and I took on a new job as part of the relocation, and my husband and I moved down here. One of the factors I feel, you know, I always felt that we ate very healthily. We lived in a beautiful area, having moved from a very hectic city, Bristol, in the southwest of England. And the decision was to move to somewhere more rural and more healthy. You know, this area is very limited in terms of work opportunities. So I ended up getting a job with the National Health Service here in Britain, in order to work down here, which was something that was not entirely, I wasn't that keen on doing, because I've always been someone who follows a natural health kind of path and have not really tended to go down any kind of mainstream medical or pharmaceutical route with any health issue in the past. So working for the NHS, as they're called here, was somewhat challenging for me, but it was well paid and I had to take the opportunity. I'd worked with substance misusers for 10 years prior to moving here. So it was a very stressful job. It's working with street homeless people, people with mental health problems, sex workers, all kinds of people in difficult situations, and vulnerable adults. But it's an area I'm very experienced in, and I feel I've done a lot to help people in those situations. So I was still within the same kind of role, but down here I had to take a less kind of generic therapeutic type of position, where I used to have a very free rein working with people to kind of help get them back into society and function and get them housed and those kind of basic needs that people have. And yet the work I came to do here was working in doctors' surgeries, prescribing methadone basically. And that was something that sat well with me. So I think I started to get an awful lot of stress built up inside me. I struggled with the work, and not only morally for me, but also in terms of the style of work, and I felt rather unqualified for that role. So it was very stressful for me having that job, and it was after just over I think it was nearly 2 years in that role before I then got the diagnosis of breast cancer.
Okay, so you obviously you relate a lot of that stress to your diagnosis. That's why that's.
Yes, I would say, yeah. I would say that, in terms of a stressful life, that's a huge factor. There's no doubt about it. I very much believe that, because with stress comes a kind of acidic environment in your body, and this is an area where cancer thrives. Cancer, arthritis, those kinds of conditions are inflammatory conditions that like an acid environment, if you like. And that's not only in terms of what you eat and drink, but it's also your environment and how you are in yourself psychologically. So, I think that was one of the key things that really increased my stress levels. But having gone through this whole path, it's 5 years now, I've discovered more and more things that I think have probably contributed to this illness. Yeah.
And the stress is like so important to recognize. It's one of the things that's very hard to to measure. Sometimes it's even hard to recognize in our lives. But anyway, bringing us to the diagnosis. What was that like for you? How did that play? What were your symptoms, or did you discover a lump? How did that happen?
Okay, it was a complete shot out the blue for me, shot out the dark, whatever. I had no symptoms. I had no idea. I had no lump, nothing apart from I knew I was stressed at work. I went along for a routine mammogram that's offered probably for most women throughout the world when they reach their 50s. And it was just, 6 months after I became 50 that I was asked to go for a standard mammogram. So it was my first one. And I went to a mobile unit in a car park near my local town. And from that, they discovered they spotted there were some abnormal cells, and that I would need to go back to the clinic at the hospital for further testing. So I then, it was a series of quite close together appointments. I was absolutely terrified from the moment I heard that I had abnormal cells until about 2 or 3 years ago, really, to be honest. It's a horrifically frightening diagnosis, and one that I think many people will think, oh my God, this is a death sentence. And that's how it felt for me. when they started to talk about the treatments and the time scale, I was reassured by some of their comments, such as yours is not a particularly aggressive one. We've caught it nice and early, and so we're confident we can kind of help you. They use words like, I think we can extend your life by 5 years. Now that sort of comment really freaked me out. I'm thinking, I'm fine, and now you're going to tell me I could die within 5 years unless I have the treatment. That was the kind of message I was getting from them. So it terrified me absolutely beyond all belief. And the more I heard about what the treatments they offered, the more I shrunk away from it, the more frightened I got. I've known plenty of people who've gone through all those treatments. Some who appear to have doing okay at the moment, and some are no longer with us, and some have some very, very serious side effects as a result of those treatments. And so this was something I was petrified of even contemplating. And actually, whilst many very kind people have said to me later on during my regime how brave I've been in sticking to it and not having those treatments, in the first few years, really, and certainly few months, I was given a huge amount of pressure to go and have the treatment, get it over with, do it quickly, and then you can think about some complementary therapies. But this wasn't something I was absolutely terrified. And to be very honest, it was the fear of having the treatment that's kept me going, because I just thought there's no way I want or will agree to having those treatments for me. So, you know, it kept me driven, the fear, really.
Oh boy, yeah. So that's, yeah, it's really astonishing because it's the fear generally that gets you to do the treatments. However, you had enough experience to know and to see that the treatments are sometimes as bad as the original diagnosis. So what treatments were they recommending for you?
The usual 3 treatments, which I thought was kind of overkill. You know, if I had a very early stage, non-aggressive little, not even a lump, then how come they want to chuck surgery, chemo, and radiation at me?
They did recommend chemo as well?
Oh yeah, all of it.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay.
And they kept trying to sort of persuade me. They kept sending me to see head of radiology and oncology to get persuaded that these treatments aren't that bad, and you know, I really ought to have one of them, if not both, as well as the surgery, of course. I just no way, not for me.
Yeah. So all right. So what'd you do? Did you go home and immediately start researching?
Basically, yeah. I had a homeopath. I've had a homeopath for the last sort of 25 years. Okay. Not the same one, but I've always seen a homeopath for my health needs. So I immediately spoke with her and went to see her as soon as I could. And I also rang my sister, who lives out in Spain, and she's also someone of the alternative camp, having herself trained as a scientist, biochemist, and worked in cancer research quite extensively in the early part of her career. She then turned away from that kind of approach to this condition and health in general, and has been a kind of natural health, alternative health promoter as well, or supporter. Yeah. So between those 2 people, I felt very reassured that there were other ways that we can handle this. And my homeopath was absolutely key in that, but also my sister was as well. My sister knew someone out in Spain who had appeared to have recovered from her breast cancer diagnosis following a sort of fairly intensive regime of alternative treatments.
Yeah. When you start looking into the communities now around natural medicine and specifically natural cancer treatments, there are so many people that have had good, success with those methods. But if it wasn't for people coming together online, you would never, unless you knew somebody specifically. And you were, you already were involved in natural health with a homeopath. And it's just
Yeah.
unfortunate that a lot of people don't even know that that type of practitioner is available. Most people here in the U.S. and our community actually has a lot of natural health practitioners, but a lot of people still don't even know that that is an option when faced
Yeah.
with, especially some kind of chronic illness. All right, so
Yeah.
so you through consulting with your homeopathic doctor and your sister who had some experience, you started making some changes in your lifestyle. Is that what happened?
Yes, I had some consultations with my homeopath, and she was giving me remedies, partly to deal with the initial shock of the news, and then obviously to start working on some root causes as to why I may have manifested this. So, homeopathy and many of the alternative treatments really start to look at what caused the condition in the first place, and to try and identify that, and to take some steps to rebalance that or readjust that in some way, so that there's no kind of, if you like, deep-seated need, cause that's created the illness. So it was partly seeing her very regularly, but I also flew out to Spain, where my sister lives, to see her and to meet with someone who was doing very, very well. And I also had the opportunity to find out about the kind of effectiveness of cannabis oil, as well as a sort of really strict regime with diet, with kind of thought processes, with environmental factors within your life. The lady out in Spain sort of introduced me to all those kind of topics that are all going to be relevant and help on your journey with healing. So I was given a fairly detailed kind of regime from this girl in Spain, and introduced to some people, and then sort of came back home to start some of that regime back in my own home, and also to continue to do research.
Yeah, excellent. And so if you're just joining us, we're talking with Jo Knight from the UK, who's actually reversed her cancer using only natural methods and techniques since her diagnosis. And Jo is actually writing a book, and that, we'll talk more about that later, because she is actually making her protocols available. She's going to tell you, we're going to go over some of the things that she's done here on the show, but it's an extensive list, and it's a holistic approach. So you're like Jo, you were talking before the show about, and just now you were talking about how you had to address all the different aspects of your life. So, but real quick, you touched on cannabis oil, and it's a controversial therapy. However, here in the States, there are probably about 25 states now that have some kind of medical marijuana program. And I'm in the middle of another book by Dee Monty, who actually reversed her cancer, and she credits that to cannabis. So we're just so we can kind of learn a little bit about it. Was that a THC or a whole food kind of product that you were using or extract?
Sorry, are you handing that over to me, Steve?
Yeah, or what kind of cannabis was it? Was it an extract
Okay.
of the THC or CBD or a combination?
Okay, well, I was fortunate to meet an expert in Spain who was working closely with Barcelona University, and he worked on the medicinal properties of cancer for cannabis for many years, and was working with the university out there, particularly around cancer as one of the things that it's been found to help. He advised me to go for because it's completely illegal in the UK, by the way. It's not possible to legally obtain cannabis oil. So I was, he told me how to make it, and I made it. And he told me what was the best kind of ingredients for that. And he recommends a very sort of low grade. You use the weed, not the resin, so you use the kind of, you can use most of the whole plant, but basically the kind of the sort of small leaves and the flowers, but from very low grade cannabis grass. So not the kind of stuff that's produced commercially nowadays on a big scale by kind of for recreational use. It's not suitable for this type of treatment. This was his belief. So any of this kind of modern way now that's used, like hydroponics or under lights and all those sorts of things, I've been told is not suitable for medicinal cannabis. So I was fortunate to be able to acquire some of the type that he recommended. And the reason he said that the low grade stuff, that tends to be much lower in THC. I'm not an expert here, but I have more recently discovered that in fact THC is not a good idea for some types of cancer, particularly hormone-driven cancers, of which mine is one. So to avoid a high THC content is very important for the one I had. And I think for some other hormone-driven cancers, you want a much higher level of cannabinoid, as they're called CBD. And CBD is the more suitable one for my type of condition. And I think it's also very suitable for a huge range of illnesses and health conditions. I think it's more universal than the qualities of THC, but I'm not an expert in this. Yes, so I was advised to go for the high CBD element, if you like. My understanding is there are two original strains of cannabis. Again, I may not be as up to date as some people are, but I understand there are two strains. One is a sort of sativa and the other is an indica. They're the two broad strains of the original plant, and that generally the indica plant is higher in CBD, so it's a more soporific kind of medicinal kind of effect, and the THC is more from a sativa type plant and is more uplifting and sort of energizing. So the recommendation for me was to concentrate on the CBD weighted ones, if you like. So, and in fact CBD oil has now become legal in Britain, and I think possibly most places in the world now, or some of the more western areas of the world, to be an acceptable kind of medicinal product. But I think that certainly in Britain, cannabis oil is completely illegal still because it has THC in it.
In Britain, the cannabis oil is legal or not?
It's not legal. I mean, cannabis oil is not legal at all in Britain because it has THC in it.
Oh, but the CBD is?
CBD that you can buy, you know, you can buy CBD oil now that doesn't have any THC, and that appears to be accepted in this country. So
Well, good.
that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we've been really excited to see a lot of CBD become available here in the States. In fact, the farm right across the river from us is growing it and has a
Right.
really high quality CBD oil
Yeah.
extract. So, okay, excellent. And you've got a lot of therapy, so we don't want to spend too much time on that. I did want to touch base, just that's kind of the zeitgeist of the world right now. The you know the plant medicines that are actually curing or reversing chronic disease uh, are actually some of the same compounds that have been illegal for decades here in the States too. So
Yeah.
it's a sign of things changing.
Yeah.
It's very important. Okay, so now that's addressing the physical, but you talked about the mental and the emotional aspects of cancer. Can you touch on, and you already talked about the stress that you were getting through your work and all that. Did you also find, like, aside from your work, that maybe there was, maybe an emotional aspect that was maybe sourced in unresolved kind of things? Like, this seems to be kind of a pattern with cancer.
Absolutely, yes. I learned a lot of this through my homeopath, and through other sort of sources as well as I've been along my journey. I fairly early on established that holding negative emotions is very destructive for you. So it's not good for your mind, and therefore it is not good for your body. And there are particularly very strong negative emotions that have been connected and related to cancer, people with cancer. So another inspirational person who's no longer with us on this planet was a lady called Louise L. Hayes. I don't know, she was an American. She people listening in may or may not know of her. She managed to cure herself through natural methods purely, and learnt about the power of positive affirmations and positive thought processes. And she made a lot of connections with negative emotions and in what way they may be linked to certain illnesses. And cancer has been linked to the really strong negative emotions such as guilt, resentment, anger, of course, shame, the kind of real negative ones that really kind of pull you down. And I have realized through this journey how much of those emotions I've been carrying. Another big one is bereavement, grief and bereavement. And that's something I've suffered a huge amount from in my life, an enormous number of close bereavements. So some were very young people. So I've had a lot of that I've been carrying around with me for decades and not been really aware that these are issues I haven't really looked at and resolved and let go of. I tend to just get on with it, So I'd never had any counselling prior to this diagnosis, and I wasn't someone that really went to kind of look inside much. I was very much about action and sort of doing, if you like, so not much in the way of reflection and stuff like that. So that's a huge eye-opener for me, and I've seen various different counsellors, including specialist bereavement counsellors, and I've worked a lot on my mind and my mental health and my thought processes, and I've religiously, not in the religious sense, sorry, habitually use the Louise L. Hayes affirmations to keep me thinking positively. And I've gone to sleep listening to her, found her a very, very supportive kind of person, especially in those early days when I was feeling so sort of isolated and angry about my diagnosis, of course. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, I just thought that we should touch on that because it seems to be commonality with folks who have actually reversed cancer, is that they did recognize that there were things that needed to be kind of unpacked, you know, a little bit of baggage or whatever that needed to be unpacked and, you know, needed to be dealt with. And it's part of the healing process. So it's very important. You know, can't find PubMed studies about it, but you know, it's there's a pattern. So it's important to recognize that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so so we talked about some of the physical, mental, emotional aspects of the treatment. So I don't know, what was most surprising when you started to take on some of the new lifestyles and some of the protocols. What were some of the things that you were doing that maybe were kind of hard for you to wrap your mind around? Because you know, a lot of people know, well, I got to eat different, or you know, maybe take some supplements. Maybe there's some kind of deficiency in me. But was there anything that your homeopath was recommending that was really surprising that it might help you?
I wouldn't say necessarily for my homeopath. I mean, she obviously was very aware of, you know, the kind of the positive aspects of, say, following a vegan diet. I saw other practitioners and stuff along the way as well. So amongst them, I guess, and particularly with the girl I met out in Spain originally, I realised that a very strict vegan diet was the most highly recommended. As I said, I felt that we already did eat well, me and my husband, and didn't eat much meat, tiny bit of pork for some reason. The one I couldn't seem to let go of, but I did recognise certain things that were not healthy, including drinking far too much alcohol. So those were fairly radical things. So when I came back from Spain, I launched into a very strict vegan diet. I struggled with that a lot. I felt deprived, that I couldn't eat the things I like to eat. I felt like I was missing out, that everyone else could have these things and I couldn't. Lots of kind of childish emotions, if you like, but also, you know, it was a massive thing to let go of some of those, you know, it's your diet, it's your habits that you've always done, to have to let go of those. So I was very strict to start with, but then I lost a lot of weight, and I then had managed to find an Ayurvedic practitioner who started to recommend that I introduce some animal products, and so he gave me a very concise kind of diet to follow, but it did help to re-include some, say, cow. I've not touched any cow dairy since the day I was diagnosed, but because it's very high in estrogen and it's thoroughly not recommended for hormone-driven cancers, particularly because often they're pumped full of antibiotics, and also is pumped full of extra hormones, and that's the last thing you need with this kind of diagnosis. But I had reintroduced some goat and sheep dairy products because they're very, very nutritional, and they don't tend to have the sort of harmful things that mass production cow dairy has. So I do have an odd bit of, and I love cheese. I used to eat far too much of it, but I do now allow myself some goat's cheese or sheep's cheese, a little bit of goat's yogurt, goat yogurt and butter. And And ghee was a very interesting addition that my Ayurvedic practitioner suggested I took, because I had lost my appetite. I've been someone who's sometimes struggled with an appetite, and I've always been very slim anyway, so I've not got much in reserve. And he said if you have a teaspoon of ghee every day, in some form or another, it'll help give you an appetite and it'll help you put on weight. And it did exactly that. So that's like it's a type of butter, but it's what's the term? Sorry, it's gone from me. What ghee? It's in a different way, and they take something particularly harmful out of butter anyway.
Yeah, it's some of the fat separated, I believe, or but
they take out the nut.
So yeah.
So I introduced a few bits and pieces back into my diet, and I've been much happier since. And I've been told by several therapists to do what makes you feel happy within reason, because there's another really important thing, is to feel happy, emotionally happy, which is a hard thing when you've been diagnosed with cancer. People keep going, oh, stay positive, and you're like, well, how, why? It's very hard. So, and obviously food is one of those fundamental things that can make you feel happy, as long as you're sensible about it. So that helped me hugely.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. John McDougall thoroughly studied the connection between animal protein and different types of cancers. There's been dozens and dozens of studies on this, but it's the excess animal protein that we're getting. The Western diet just has it revolves around animal protein rather than having it to be more complementary into our diet in smaller doses. So, but yeah, and this actually brings me back to the beginning, something I wanted to ask you. When you were diagnosed with your cancer, was there any kind of nutritional counseling, diet recommendations, or anything from your doctors?
No, absolutely none. I am very alarmed at the, I must say, ignorance, actually, of mainstream doctors, because in this country anyway, they seem to hold no importance and make no link between what you put in your body and your health. And I find that unbelievable. And when I hear of people that are going for chemotherapy, and apparently when they are, there is a trolley that comes around full of sugar-based products, highly processed sugar, which is the worst possible thing you can put in your body if you've got cancer. So no, absolutely none. And, I would, no, they wouldn't even attempt to tell me, because I know far more than they do.
Yeah.
No, there's no link whatsoever in our health system. It's alarming.
Yeah, it's a sad situation, because I have not visited an oncology unit or anything like that, but from what I understand, sugar is kind of freely available in there, and you're
They
told,
actually recommend, yeah,
and you're told you can eat whatever you want, but it's just a kind of a blind spot based on industry. Here in the States, cancer medication and treatment has surpassed $50 billion and is expected to double by the year 2020 or 2022. So we're talking about $100 billion industry in one small part of the world.
Yeah.
So there's no money in nutritional research. So there you go. All right, so Joe, Anything else about your, well, I know you've put this group together and you've got a book coming out, and you've also made your list of treatments available to the viewing audience. So that's all very very giving. But how's the book coming? When do you expect that to be available?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I think it's going to be a little away. I'm making good progress, and I've just recently met two very good friends who are helping me with that. And one's a designer, illustrator, artist, designer, and she's talking to me about how we want the book to look, which is very exciting. And I have another person who's guiding me about the actual content and layout and things like that, because I've never written a book before. But I know a lot about what I've been doing for the last 5 years, so it's just about getting it down on paper in a way that is useful for people and interesting as well. So I would say that I'm probably a few months off getting a a printed book, but I'm hoping somewhere in the next kind of 6 months maximum. But I'm hoping for much sooner than that. I originally thought, oh, I could get this done in 3 months, but hey, you learn things as you go along. So I'm getting on with it, and I want to get it out as fast as possible. But in the meantime, I have set up this group, and hopefully I can maybe help and communicate with people through that for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to do it. And yeah, don't stress yourself out over getting the book together. But it's, this type of thing just has so much potential to help people, because it's just that free flow of information. We have been kind of living in the dark ages of healthcare for a long time, and it's ending. So
Brilliant.
Yeah, so
I think really, if I was kind of to sum it all up, one thing I will say, and I need to say because it's a kind of legal requirement, if you like, is that what I'm not doing is telling people what to do themselves. I would never ever claim to do that. All I'm wanting to do with my story is to share my information and to really inspire others to know that there are other options, and that's been the most important thing for me to learn. And the more I learn, the more there is out there. It's incredible how much is out there in our natural world that can cure us of even what they call chronic or even incurable diseases. And the pharmaceutical way is one way that people may choose to go down, but there are many other ways as well. And of course, for some, it may be a combination of the two. But it's about choice. It's about putting people in, empowering people, and knowing that they could have some say in their treatment and choose what feels right for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always encourage anybody who's watching to, consult their healthcare practitioner, have a team of healthcare practitioners, and know your options, and be informed, that because that gives you the power of your own choice.
Absolutely.
Because we have to make our decisions, and we live with our own outcomes of those decisions. So if you can go into it empowered, know the right questions to ask, and know what your real options are, it's literally life-changing, right? Or life-giving even. So yeah, we have already put a link to the Facebook group in the comments. It's right at the top. And I'm going to link to a Google Doc that is going to give, or actually, why don't we put that in the group? We'll put your treatments right in the group, because you can put files in there. And if you have any trouble with that, I can help you with it. But if you go to the group that Joe set up, you'll have access to her treatments and her protocols that she used. You know, just so for your own research, for your, it'll just give you things to look up and some ideas if you or a loved one are facing a diagnosis such as this. But yeah, Joe, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap things up here?
I just want to say really how you know, how an area that I've ended up focusing on more and more has been about frequency and vibration, and then there's kind of a lot of new kind of treatments, protocols coming through, and many that have existed a long time. And of course, homeopathy is part of that group. But there's also what are known as the batch or bark flower remedies. They also work on a vibrational level, and those are two things I've used a lot in my life. But also my most recent treatment has been the Dr. Holder Clark protocol, and that's been possibly the thing that has completely completed my kind of treatment regime, if you like, for me. And it was through the Dr. Holder Clark kind of protocols that I learned that you can get tested by using a simple saliva sample, and they measure the frequencies that exist in that saliva sample, and that you can get a full and detailed medical report of what's going on in your body just from a swab, a mouth swab. And that's been one of the big turning points for me, and somewhere I'm always going to stay in terms of monitoring my health.
Oh, excellent. Can we link to your source for that test?
Yes, I could put something on my group, but anyone interested can, again, look up on the internet, Dr. Holder Clark. And there are various practitioners throughout the world. I know there's several in the States, and you can contact those. My therapist is in Spain. You don't have to be near your therapist either. You can do it all by post. So it's an amazing way to manage and monitor your health, as well as receiving the treatment. So, but I can put something on the group page for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I did read, I don't know if she has other books, but she has a book called The Cure for All Cancers. And she had case studies of like over 100 people with different types of cancer that all responded to the same therapy. So part of part of the confusion with cancer seems to come from the overcomplication, like all these different types of cancer, and they all have different treatments, and they all have different causes, you know, so we need new medications, different medications, more, more, it's just more, which equates to more money out of the healthcare system. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, if you read Holder Clark's book, you will find that yes, there are a lot of different types of cancer, but they do have common sources